Hey, everybody. Welcome to Knights Report via Zoom here this afternoon. Great to have you with us. Dave Gosher, along with Shane Knighty, Gary Lawless, and Darren Elliott. Guys, I'm not sure how any of this works, but I think the fine people with the Golden Knights and the production staff will make us look a lot better. Shane, we both need that, a lot better than we actually look in everyday life.
Hey, I had no problem getting hooked up. I think this is fantastic. This is ready to roll. It's a good way for us to remotely be able to put out content. So I think this is great.
Yeah, this is in lieu of our Golden Knights studio at City National Arena. So we're fortunate to have this as an opportunity to visit with everybody. We welcome in Gary Lawless and Darren Elliott as well. Gary, kind of go around the horn here a little bit. Just the latest. We're going to get to some other things in a couple of minutes, but it's been a bit of a busy week for the NHL in terms of there's been a couple of different phone calls, one with the Board of Governors and owners earlier in the week, and then general managers, I guess, on yesterday. What's the latest you're hearing in terms of where the league's at right now and what potentially the next few weeks and or months might look like?
Well, the latest news is that the NHL has canceled the NHL Combine, the draft combine. They've canceled the draft, the entry draft in Montreal, and they've also canceled the NHL awards. Now, the entry draft will take place in some form or fashion, probably by phone. They've done that before, and the NFL did it by phone forever. So that will be that'll be something that they get to in the near future. They can't have an entry draft until the season's over, because you don't know the order until you determine a champion, et cetera. So if they don't play again, I guess they would use the standings to the league standings to determine the entry draft order. There's got to be a lottery. There's all kinds of things that sort of need to get worked out. Another real big piece of news this week for the NHL came when the IOC postponed the Olympics, because if the Olympics were on television in late July and into early August, NBC, a big rights holder with the Olympics, and then also the U.S. national rights holder for TV in the United States, you couldn't be playing. It'd be real hard to be playing hockey at the same time as the Olympics were going on, because they couldn't be on TV, or at least not on the main NBC network. So with that postponement, that opens a window, a broadcast window for the National Hockey League in July and August. So that is something I think that kind of, has that resulted, or the possibility of that resulted in the NHL sending a memo out to all their teams saying, begin to look at dates, playoff dates in your arena in August. So now this is all, Bill Daly said, we're biting this off a chunk at a time. So that's the latest chunk that they've bit off. Let's see if we could, if things work out and the virus, recedes, and we believe we're in a place where society is healthy enough, because it's not just the players. Society has to be healthy enough in North America for these games to go on, because there's so many other people involved in it. So if the virus slows down and society is healthy enough and in a position that we could play in August, let's make sure we have the arena dates and the opportunity to do that. So lots of things still, at the end of the day, everything is still up in the air. They have made some cancellations, and they are, they're making, they're deliberating and making plans. I would imagine they've got, any number of matrices that would allow them to conclude this season without impacting next season. But that's really where we are right now in terms of the state of the NHL. Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin both said today that they would be willing to forego any more regular season games and just go right into the playoffs. So I think you're going to get a different opinion from the stars of the game and players in the game, depending on where their team sits in the standings. I bet you if you asked Blake Wheeler in Winnipeg if he was willing to just have the season roll right into the playoffs, he'd give you a hard no.
Well, Gary, you mentioned, the league and all this kind of a fluid situation. There was news today, the Colorado Avalanche releasing a statement. They have a player that has tested positive for the coronavirus. So that's the third player we know of, right? There were two members of the Ottawa Senators, now a member of the Avalanche. The league had put this self-quarantine date to the end of this week initially, right? It was going to be March the 27th. They pushed that back now to April the 4th. So another week of self-quarantine among NHL players and staffs. Darren, I wanted to welcome you in here. We haven't really had a chance to visit with you in this sort of a forum since all this kind of happened over the last couple of weeks. Where do you sit with all of this? Do you have your own thoughts on if and when the NHL is able to resume play, what that might look like, be it regular season or potentially, some sort of a playoffs here into the next few months?
Yeah, as Gary said, so many different agendas, matrices, I'm sure contingency plans. I just know from like City National Arena standpoint, we have to keep the ice ready for that eventuality. But that didn't mean we had to keep both sheets. So we moved our maintenance up in the building, took out rink B over the weekend. But you still want the ice to be pristine if and when the players are called back to any kind of pre-training camp, because that's the other thing. It's not just going to be, okay, we've got games going, the buildings are available, everybody's healthy. It's like the players have to get reacclimated to being elite athletes again. So there's so many moving parts. I'm with everybody else hoping that they can get back to it. In terms of what would make the most sense, I think, again, timeline will dictate that. But I don't know that going back and completing the season, so that brings into who gets to qualify. Is it points percentage? Is it something that simple? All those kinds of things in terms of determining who would make the playoffs if they were to start with the format of 16 that's on the books now.
Be interesting, Shane, that, Gary's point, if you're the Winnipeg Jets and Blake Wheeler, or you're one of these other teams that is really fighting to get into the top 8 in each conference, the issue right now is not every team's played the same amount of games, right? The Golden Knights have played 71. Other teams have played 68, 69. But I guess the other side of that would be these are unprecedented times in the world and in pro sports in general. There might not be a fair resolution to this. As much as we might, let's play the best case scenario, they're able to come back and play. Yeah. There might not be a fair resolution. It might be, okay, guys, we're going to have to go right into the Stanley Cup playoffs, and the top best 8 winning percentages in each conference get an invitation.
And you're right. There's no real way that everybody's going to be happy through this. It's unique. It's never been in this type of situation. So, right now you look at it, you have guys come finish, say the cutoff 72 games. Well, then it's unfair to the teams that are higher, because at this point, the more practice games teams are going to get in, the more ready they're going to be for a playoff situation. Sidney Crosby saying come right back to playoffs. The only thing that I like about that is every team that's in there is in the same situation. The first game is their first game back. Nobody has had previous games. They've all had the same time to get ready. So when you're thinking about fairness, it's fair in that sense that all the playoff teams, however that gets structured, are ready to go. But, it's going to be unique. It's going to change week to week, different scenarios and how they think this can work out. But I certainly want to see the Stanley Cup handed out. Do we have much? Obviously the Golden Knights are in first, but, for other teams, yeah, it's going to be disappointing if they go by the points percentage and their season's over and they have to wait till possibly November to play again.
Shane, you mentioned something there. All of us were in the league when there was the lockout.
Yeah.
I mean, completely different situation, but what a hollow feeling that was to have no Stanley Cup handed out. So I think that's why the league has really put forth, they want to award the Stanley Cup in any any manner possible.
Well, and in the lockout, we didn't play any games for it.
Right.
This year, and you think even the shortened lockout, was it 48 games? They
right.
handed out Stanley Cup. These teams have already grinded it out for 70. So, they're all right around that 70.
Yeah.
That's a lot of games in a season. You know how hard it is to grind in a season and then not be able to play Stanley Cup. As a player, when that one would be tough to take.
It's only happened twice, right, guys? In the history of the league, they haven't handed it out. One was, ironically enough, the Spanish influenza epidemic back in late 19, and then the lockout year where the whole year got lost in 04, 05. But they seem pretty determined to find a way, be it going into the summer months. I know, Gary, that there was something I read today that all teams have been asked to kind of submit dates that their building would be available right through August. Did I hear that right today? That's how far down the line they're looking into this right now.
Yeah, that's correct. There's a memo that went out, I believe, on either Monday or Tuesday morning, saying to all of the teams, make sure that start looking at dates in August, because that's one of the scenarios that we're looking at. It'll be fascinating to see how this all unfolds. And Gary Bettman he's got to satisfy 31 owners right off the bat. Those guys are everything that they do here. I was listening to Don Fair talk today, and he says that his people at the NHLPA speak to the National Hockey League, 7 or 8 times a day on a whole host of issues. And he described the relationship right now as practical and cooperative. So it's the players are going to have a massive say in this. And I believe it was Nick Foligno said today, if you ask the players to play the playoffs in August and a bit of September, especially your star players, and then you take a little break and then you start up again and you play an entire season and another playoff, that's going to be a lot of hockey for some guys in from say August to the end of June, or, in an 11-month period, you're going to play a ton of hockey. And he believes that'll be hard on some guys. So all of these factors are going to have to be considered and weighed in as they make these decisions. And the Players Association, there's all kinds of economic factors that they have to look at, because their salaries are based on hockey-related revenue, and it's a 50-50 split. Well, if these games aren't played, these rest of the regular season games, there's a chunk of hockey-related revenue taken out. And then depending on what the economy is like and the ability to purchase tickets when you get back to playing, it's really unpredictable what the actual number is going to be. The salary cap was pegged to be at around $84 million for next year. Where it will be and how the NHL and NHLPA find a way to make an agreement on those transition rules, that's going to be fascinating.
The other thing, Darren, that I just wanted to touch on in a moment, we're going to veer off path a little bit and talk about our paths and how we kind of got to, and they're all interesting paths, to say the least, and interesting journeys. But the other thing, Darren, that our radio man, Dan Duver, brought up the other day, we were recording a podcast, and here we are, obviously because of where the Golden Knights are in the standings, talking about the potential of the playoffs and what would that picture look like. His point was, what if you play for Detroit, Ottawa, New Jersey? I can go right on down the line of teams that have been playing games that really aren't that meaningful here for a little while, right? Especially over the last month or two, when it was pretty obvious you were going to miss the playoffs. These guys are out for, let's say, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it might be. And if they have to come back and play 1 or 2 regular season games, and then their season obviously comes to an end again, that's a much different scenario, I would imagine, for those guys compared to guys that are on teams that are either in a playoff spot or real close to one right now.
Yeah, well, going back to playing days, it was always an empty feeling when the season ended. So to have to end it twice in a short period of time, that would be tough on guys. Absolutely. Then you've got to wait and watch, and then the next season is going to be a little bit funky as well, because you're going to have a delayed or a deferred start time. So lots of different perspectives to be taken into consideration, as Gary alluded to, not just economically, but just in the realm of the hockey world.
All right, guys, we wanted to get to – go ahead. Shane, were you going to offer –
Guys are paid to play.
Good point by you. Yep, no question about it. So one way or
Gary's got
another.
a lot of excuses and everything, but look, they're paid to play. Go right 3-3 in the minor leagues. A lot of these guys haven't done that. It's
Yep.
I know
True.
it's tough.
Those guys,
It's a
and those
grind.
guys are on hold.
Exactly.
The American Hockey League. Yeah.
I bet you they wouldn't care. They'd play right from July,
No
June
kidding.
through August without a.
Not going to be fair. You're right, Shane. You know, the lockout
Yes.
year of 12-13, right? Where guys missed. If you missed the playoffs in April of 13 or April of 12, you weren't starting again for another 9 months until January of 13 after that lockout. So it's not really about what's fair to a large extent. I think
Sure.
it's what can the best possible scenario you can paint for as many teams as possible, realizing you're not going to ever make anybody happy.
What did Mark Cuban say the other day? Don't let perfection get in the way of progress. This isn't going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, we wanted to kind of take a little different road here and talk about our paths as to how in the world we got these jobs. It's a valid point for all concerned. Darren, I want to start with you because you go to Cornell. Not sure how you get in.
Yeah,
But anyway,
exactly. Me neither.
and you're in the Athletic Hall of Fame, which is it's good for you. But how does one go from take us through getting into Cornell and playing for the Big Red, and now here you are, you know.
Well, this is only a 30-minute show. I'll try to give you a
bridge version.
condensed version. I was growing up in Southern Ontario. I was going to play for the Oshawa Generals. I was playing junior B hockey.
The
I
Legionnaires.
had the Legionnaires, and I had a teammate named Dale Howarchuk who ended up in the Hall of Fame. He was 15, I was 16, and our coach was Mike Keenan, and he became Iron Mike, and he took our team to St. Lawrence University, his alma mater. And I'm like, okay, this is college hockey. This is pretty cool. Frat party. Look at the crowd. We only played one game. And as a kid, you're like, we came all this way we play one game, 3 nights there. Boondoggle for Keenan. So I figured out why we were there so long to only play one game. But it gave me an insight into college hockey, what it might be. Then there's a kid I'd played against my whole life, Bob Ferguson, another goaltender. He was drafted, and he was in the OHL, too young, obviously, but right out of midget. He gets traded 5 weeks in. I go, you know what? I don't really like the thought of that. So in combination, introduction to college hockey, seeing what the OHL could be like, I went and took the SATs. Guess what? 3/4 of the junior B league was there. We're all standing. Nobody knew what was going on. We're taking our SATs. What is an SAT? Not like the kids today where they study for it and have tutors. We just went in and just did the best you could and went from there. And then I went and saw the campus, and I was like, okay. And the other thing was I could get out of an extra year of high school. They had grade 13 back then when I was going to high school. So in the States, if you were able to, your SATs, 4 years of high school, you had your secondary degree, and I didn't have to get traded. I'm like, sign me up. Went to Cornell, got in, and that's the biggest mystery of all, Dave. How the hell did I get in?
Yeah, it's a miracle. All right, here's what I want to know above all else. So you play 89 games in the NHL.
Watched a lot more. I watched a lot more from the end of the bench.
So you're in Detroit, Buffalo, but you also are in LA.
Yeah.
But you're in LA pre-Gretzky,
Yes.
but right in the middle of Magic and Kareem and the Lakers thing.
Showtime.
How often did you hang out with Magic and Jerry Buss at the Forum Club?
0. I worked out once with Michael Cooper just by accident. We shared the weight room, if you
Did
can
he have the
believe
long
it.
tube socks on? Even
Yeah, the big socks.
except to his knees?
But we shared a weight room, and I think it was just like remember the old Universal machines? Wasn't very much. But yeah, the Forum Club was legendary.
You didn't go?
Oh, many, many times, but not with Jerry Buss, and not with Magic. Yeah, spent some fun times there at the old Forum Club.
Gary, how in the world did you get to doing what you're doing here? I mean, let's face it. The odds were against it.
What's the expression? If you can't do, you teach. Well, I wrote instead of teaching, but I grew up in Peterborough, Ontario, just 45 minutes away from Oshawa, where where Darren was playing, and the Peterborough Petes were
Big rival.
big rival of the Generals, and you know,
Here, 1 second.
it was a lot of fun watching junior hockey as I was growing up. And then I got a job at the arena as a rink rat at the Memorial Center in Peterborough, and just kind of paid attention. But my brother's a lawyer, and my kind of plan was to go to law school as well. And then I went to visit him one day, and he was working at a big firm on Bay Street in Toronto. And he was an articling student. They had him literally in a broom closet, and there was a desk jammed into it. And there were files. You couldn't see them when you walked in. And I said, "Hey, let's go for lunch." He said, "I don't have time for lunch." I said, "Okay, I'll wait around, and then we'll go for a beer after work. I'm going to be here till 9:30 or 10. I said, "Okay, we'll go for a beer then." He goes, "I got to be back here at 5 a.m. I walked out of there and said, "I'm not going to be a lawyer.
I'm going to be a broadcaster.
Not better hours.
Wait.
So I went to journalism school, and I got a job in Thunder Bay, and that was my start. And they had the Colonial Hockey League, and it was I also had the USHL. I got to do a ton of great things there. Met some cool hockey people, and from there ended up down the road in Winnipeg, and eventually was the sports columnist at the Winnipeg Free Press, and then hooked up with TSN and did a whole bunch of things there, including
TFL, Dave.
including carrying Shane's makeup bag. I was just
A lot of makeup.
on the Death broadcast, and then ended up in Vegas. And oddly enough, after it was announced that I was coming to Vegas, my phone rang one day, and it was Shane Knighty. I'm like, "He hasn't called me in about 18 months. What's he want?" "I want to go to Vegas too." and here we are.
Nice.
Shane, you obviously long time playing pro, Stanley Cup with Boston in 2011, but long before that, the pride of Neepawa, Manitoba. Small place. How does one go from Neepawa to Vegas?
Well, it's hockey was everything. I say I'm not qualified much else. Thank goodness I can speak. That's the ability to talk, probably a gift from my mother. Yeah, well, average. There's some days there's some marbles. But yeah, I grew up in Neepawa, a small town of 3,500. One stoplight. The Yellowhead runs right through it, so a big highway in Canada. So you get Highway 16, get a lot of traffic. But other than that, it was a great place to grow up. The good thing was I always had ice available in the winter. We weren't open year round. It had to be just the cold months. But I hung around the rink as much as I could. I'd walk there, and I would spend all day Saturday, Sunday. If I didn't have games, then I would move the nets. I would help the ice crew. I'd work the time box. And just so if there was 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, I could grab my skates and go on the ice. And my buddies and I, if we weren't doing that, we were playing road hockey. We'd shovel the snow on the sides and play on the streets, or else for a while there, we had a real good setup. We climbed over the fence to the tennis courts. But the town wasn't too happy with us because they just painted it. We couldn't tell there was snow on it, but it was great. It was a nice smooth. They didn't let it, I guess when you start shoveling it, it's not good for a new paint job. But either that, and then, yeah, obviously played and then got into broadcasting and found another love and a way to watch and stay in the game. So it's been great, and happy to be in Vegas.
Dave,
I always wondered.
before we get your story, I have to interject for a second because
Yeah.
Shane had just won the Stanley Cup in 2011 with the Bruins, which you're also familiar with, Dave.
Dave was there.
And decides he's going to retire and gets a job in broadcasting. And I've been kind of, scratching and clawing to get, to build a little bit of a broadcasting career to go along with my writing career. But and as you can tell, still to this day, I was anything but a natural and never really smooth. Well, the first play that Shane ever described on radio and hockey was I was sitting there listening. I was sitting in front of my computer and had the TV. We had the TVs on in the press box, but I also wanted to hear the local guys, and they were on radio because it was a national broadcast on television. So I wanted to listen to Shane and Dennis Bayak, And right away, something happens, and just with perfect cadence, sequence, timing, Shane pops in and says, "There's two ways to get into a game. You can either give a hit or take a hit." And he just gave one. And I slammed my computer shut. I was so mad because it was like, boom, a star is born.
I learned from this guy we had in Atlanta. I used to listen to. Darren Elliott was he was the analyst when I was playing for the Thrash.
That's right, down in Atlanta, and I remember some of those teams. Lots of good players, lots of good personalities came through that never could quite figure it out in terms of success. But it wasn't because of the lack of the guys that came through there. They all went on to have success somewhere else.
Shane, I had a quick question for you. It took you, correct me if I'm wrong, 4 years going through the American Hockey League. Am I right? Before you made it, quote unquote, made it to the NHL, 4 to 5?
So let's say the ECH, 4 years, ECHL,
Yeah.
IHL, AHL.
So all
Wow.
3 of the minor leagues.
You
at
did
that
them all.
point, right? So you had the
I was
trifecta.
everywhere. Oh yeah, everywhere.
But did the thought, before you finally broke through with Ottawa, right? Did the thought ever enter your mind in that time frame that, you know what, this might not happen for me in terms of making it to the NHL on a regular basis? Or did you not let your mind wander that far?
You know when it happened? It actually happened after. So I finished juniors at 20-year-old, and Buffalo didn't sign me. That's who drafted me. So as a free agent, I went to Chicago Blackhawks camp, and I think Craig Hartsburg was the coach. It wasn't a great camp. I got sent down to Indianapolis. That didn't go well. I went home, and then I started talking to the Canadian universities. I was talking to Acadia, U of Alberta, and that's when I thought of quitting. When a guy named Pierre Maguire called me up on the phone and asked me to come play down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in the East Coast Hockey League. They had an inaugural team down there, and I said sure. And you know what? I went and played for Pierre, and Pierre, he's the first guy that ever. I went and I played really well. Everything went well. I fought like the Ogie Oglethorpe of that league at the time, Kevin Evans. I fought him twice in one game.
Peterborough boy, Kevin Evans.
And then I never forget walking on the bus. Pierre Maguire was the first guy who said, "You know what, kid, you can make the NHL." And to me, he'd just come from coaching there, with Pittsburgh in the early '90s. So that was the first time I'd heard that, and I think that kind of it carried from there.
It does take somebody to believe in you.
It does,
right?
yeah.
I mean, it really does.
Yeah.
Hey, Ghost, I wanted to ask you, how did you always want to be a broadcaster, or did you always want to be a hockey broadcaster? How did you get into this?
Yeah, the funny part of it is, Darren, so I played, I started probably skating when I was 5 or 6, right? And just in my growing up in Rhode Island and Pawtucket,
Right.
about 10 miles north of Providence, and I played youth hockey and high school hockey and prep school hockey.
Yeah.
And then I went to Boston University. And BU back then, so this would have been early 90s, they had a wagon. I mean, they went to the Final Four in 3 of the 4 years I was there. So my sophomore year, I tried out for the JV team, and I was the last cut from the JV team. And I think at that point I was pretty much done in terms of like trying to, play at any sort of a good level. And obviously, BU was one of the best programs in the country. So the other reason I went to BU was they had and still have one of the best communications programs in the country. So I thought, I love the game. The broadcasters get to travel with the team. They get to go to the games for free. They pay you a little bit of money. That seems like that was as rudimentary as my thinking.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I mean,
You had a plan.
Yeah, that was the plan. That was the plan.
Dave,
Not knowing that, there's an East Coast League, there's an AHL,
Yeah.
IHL, as Shane mentioned back then.
Some guy tweeted the other night that he was listening to the Beanpot game, and there was another guy doing the game, and then he said, "I'm going to bring in Dave Gosher," and the guy on Twitter said you came on and that you were just fantastic. So tell that story, please.
Well, the funny part of it was, Gary, so my senior year at BU, at the old Boston Garden, what a great barn, right? BU was playing Harvard for the Beanpot Championship. And I had interned at a TV station in Providence that previous 2 summers. One of the main anchors for that station was the rinkside reporter it was Channel 38 back in Boston that was airing the game. He comes up to me. It says, he was kind of, how's school going? How's your senior year going? I said, pretty good. I'm doing some games. Next thing I know, he shows up in the old perch at the Boston Garden in the middle of the second period, I think it was. And Sean McDonough was doing the game for the real station, the TV station. But Sean says to this fellow, Gene Levanchi, hey, this is a big moment, not only for the players but also for, student radio broadcasters. And here's Dave Gosher from Boston University's WTBU. So he stuck the mic in front of me for literally maybe 10 seconds. So the other night, they're re-airing to fill the void of hockey at Beanpot on Nesson. And some guy tweeted me, Gary, he goes, this is, 2 nights ago. He goes, I'm watching the rerun of the Beanpot from 1993. I'm playing the guitar and I'm half drunk. And they just put you on the air. I said, a half drunk thing would make anything sound pretty good. So
now we know why you're always buying McDonough dinner whenever we're in the same town.
Yeah, there you go.
That makes sense now.
Exactly. But anyway, so that was I do
Really?
have a
Cool
quick
story.
Story, Darren, just about Gary. You mentioned your brother is a lawyer. My dad was a truck driver. God rest him for 30 years, and I'd always been bugging him to take me out on one of his runs. He drove 18-wheelers, and he kind of kept putting me off. So my spring break, my sophomore year, he says, all right, David, let's go. So he worked for a company that, they were the transportation company for drugstores. So, whatever CVS or whatever, the drugstore would carry. So his run started, the start of Cape Cod, kind of all the way up to the arm, right up the arm of Cape Cod. So we left at 4 a.m. And I remember walking out our side door and I said to him, Dad, it's still dark out. He goes, David, every day when I go to work, it's dark outside. And I thought, this is nuts. How do you do this? So I just thought I was going along for the ride. No.
Got to fill it.
Trailer, unload the trailer. This is what I signed up for. So he literally would work from like 4 to 3 every day, and maybe even 4 to 4. And then he was a regular he was like clockwork 4 to 6 at the local pub. But I remember thinking to myself, and he was never the type of guy that would ever say, this is a life lesson for you. He was basically saying to me, this is my job. This is what it's like every day. If you don't want to do this, you better make sure you keep your head screwed on straight in college. And that was all I needed to hear. I decided, like, Gary, you made the decision you weren't going to be a lawyer. I made the decision I wasn't going to follow in the family business, like right then and there that day.
Excellent.
My grades made the decision for me.
Well, one of the things that was common in all the 4 stories, really, the rink rat mentality. We love being on the ice, love being in the rinks, and we're still in the rink. That's how I consider it a success. It's like I still get to call the rink my office. So far, so good.
I can't imagine doing anything else, guys. I don't know about you, but like a friend of mine used to, we were joking around one day, and it's kind of an odd conversation, but he said, what do you want on your headstone? And I said, I don't know. I haven't given it any thought. He goes, I'll tell you what I want. He went to games for a living. So that's a pretty good way to put it. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, all the rest of it is, superfluous to go on hockey games for a living. So it's a pretty good gig.
We say we're going to work all the time, but like, I've never worked a day in my life. Well,
There you go.
That's true.
I did when I used to like, it doesn't feel like that. It's always felt like,
You're passionate about it. That's why.
Watching games and writing and talking about games and players, and some players are nice guys, Darren, and some guys are jerks, Shane. So you know what I mean?
I was just going to say, look at some guys I have to work with. It's work. Trust me. Some days
guys,
it's work.
we certainly, and we should reiterate, we all realize how lucky we are, right?
Yeah, for sure.
These days where people, if you look around the world and around the United States and in Nevada, and we all have good friends that are really have hit hard times with everything that's going on right now. And we are thinking of them, and we hope that, doing shows like this can provide a little bit of an escape, maybe a little bit of levity to watch. Darren, I always call us knuckleheads. So for this segment, anyways, you're part of us knuckleheads. Anyway.
Yeah, no,
Welcome.
honored to be part of it. One of the things about the rink too, right, that we all love is the bustle. And that's what I miss the most now, the kids coming in the morning, seeing them, their excitement, their enthusiasm. That carries me many, many days, and can't wait till it's back.
Yeah, same here. All right, guys, Shane, Gary, Darren, we appreciate it very much. Thanks for joining us, obviously remotely through Zoom for this edition of Knights Report. Hope everyone is able to enjoy it, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for tuning in.